Hi guys, welcome to Interior Insights. My name is Jane and today we will look at a piece of architecture that you've never seen before and that you will never forget. We are in Copenhagen and today we will look at an incredible houseboat and home of an architect. Join me as we look at this incredible design together. So I haven't visited the houseboat yet, only seen pictures, and from the outside it looks super cool but also a bit unusual. And with houseboats, you always have these big questions. Is it actually comfortable? Does enough light come in? And is it truly livable? So I'm really curious whether this space just looks amazing or it actually functions for daily life. At the end of this video, we will rate this houseboat on the 4 most important pillars when it comes to interior design: functionality, color and materials, light and atmosphere, and aesthetics. We are already standing on the boat, and in front of us there is a huge terrace that is filled with large squares where all kinds of plants are growing from. We have some broccoli, there's salad, there's rosemary, there's tomatoes growing, so you basically have your own little garden and it's absolutely gorgeous. As soon as you enter the houseboat, you just have this incredible Scandinavian light-filled loft in front of you. And it is absolutely incredible because to all sides of the loft we have windows that flood the space with light. We even have a skylight, and later I will show you a special seating area in the top. And it just has this absolutely incredible atmosphere that you can lose yourself in. Now, this houseboat actually used to be a ferry boat that used to transport cars, and it was built in 1956. So it is quite old. It doesn't have the typical layout of a house because of course it wasn't conceptualized as one. But the architect who moved in here and created a home for himself and his family has managed to really transform the houseboat into a one-of-a-kind home. The boat has 2 floors as well as a special small extra floor that I will show you later. And we are already in the base floor. The entire floor consists of an open space living layout. What gives the layout its structure is a large staircase that is in the center of the room and that basically lets you down into the sleeping areas and the more private area of the home. And around it we have all of these different functions of the space organized. A really great help for me would be if you could subscribe to the channel so that we can continue to bring great design to you and help incredible design rise to the top. If you want more behind the scenes content and interior design tips, go follow our Instagram. In the very front of the boat, overlooking the second terrace, there's the dining room area, and it consists of a large wooden Scandinavian table that is very minimalist and has these very sleek and warm lines. And it is surrounded by different chairs of Arne Jacobsen. And I'm sure you know him, he's also a Scandinavian designer who is super famous for his chairs. This chair is called the number 7, and there's different variations around it. And I always love it whenever you don't just have one color of a chair, but if you really mix it up. And these are just a perfect example of spectacular Danish design. Also in this area of the open living room, there's windows to all 3 sides, so it almost seems like a small atrium or a small winter garden, as we would call it in German. And the windows over here just create a small zoned area. We are already standing in the kitchen, and the kitchen just mimics the long, narrow shape of the staircase, and it is an absolutely gorgeous kitchen. For the counter, there's stainless steel. Scandinavian and Danish people really love their stainless steel. We've seen so many of these stainless steel kitchens throughout the apartments we've visited. If you haven't seen them yet, we've linked them below. And the kitchen cabinets are kept in these very warm wooden tones, and I love that they are all structured in a different way so that you just have this very playful variety among them. What really makes this home stand out is that it is not just floating and on top of the water, but that we have these windows to all directions. And so also on top of the kitchen, there's a lot of small windows that fill the kitchen with light and just give it the sense of repetition. And the kitchens also form natural niches where you can place your objects and things, so you don't actually need an extra countertop or shelving system at the top. I also really love the architect's passion for industrial things and just shaking things up with more rough textures. And so over here we have a gas stove with this very large thing on top. I'm actually not sure what the name in English is, but that basically takes up all of the hot air, and you just have these very industrial details throughout the apartment. Or for example, all of the pots and pans aren't stowed below in the kitchen and aren't hidden, but are actually hanging from the ceiling, and they kind of just create this rustic industrial iron sculpture, and I absolutely love these small and rough details. Quick pause, let's do a quick color palette analysis of this incredible houseboat, because here we have a very layered but at the same time a quite surprising and unusual color palette. So first, as a base, we have these really clean white walls that kind of bounce around all of the light that is entering through the windows, and they almost kind of act like light reflectors because their job really is to primarily just reflect the entire light that comes into the houseboat. Then we have the vintage wooden floor. It's brown and it really visually grounds everything and creates the sense of home and heartfulness. It gives the houseboat its sense of history and makes it feel less like a boat and more like a real apartment where you can really feel safe and actually fall asleep at night and don't feel like you're gonna drown. And because it's so dark, it makes all of the elements placed on top of it pop even more. And then you have my favorite color of all time, all of these really crisp, bright yellow accents, and it's such a clever color choice because yellow on top of white just creates this very crisp and bright energy. And then of course you have plants. Every direction you look, you have different colors of green coming from all of the plants that are standing around the space, and the green really adds that natural groundedness and just gives a sense of balance to the space. And if you didn't know it, yellow and green sit right next to each other on the color wheel, meaning that this color palette is actually an analog color palette. More on that in my color course if you're interested. And so the secret to this apartment really is its analog color palette, because there really is a lot happening within the room, but the analog color palette just ties it all together and gives it the sense of cohesion and calm. And you know how I always talk about design that's supposed to feel safe, intentional, and truly like you? Well, that also applies to your digital space. And while editing today's apartment tour, I actually used something that protects mine every single day, which brings us to the sponsor of today's video, NordVPN. So let me tell you a bit of a backstory. Whenever we film and travel all around the world to give you the best apartment tours out there, from Copenhagen to Paris and very soon to Asia, we constantly have to be connected to different Wi-Fis to be able to work, and that is basically the digital equivalent of having strangers walk inside your house and rummage through all of your different drawers. And NordVPN is like a beautiful lock for your digital home. One click and everything is protected. And it has a lot of extra features. They even have crazy features like Threat Protection Pro, which basically warns you when you're about to land on a fake website. And whenever I'm traveling abroad, I can still use all of these streaming subscriptions that I pay for back home, and NordVPN is literally the fastest VPN on the entire planet. I promise you that. So if you want your digital world to feel as safe and intentional as your real life home, check out NordVPN. Head to nordvpn.com/InteriorInsights to get an exclusive deal with 4 extra months for free. Over here we have a seating area that consists of a sofa and 2 lounge chairs. One of them is by the Danish designer Hans Wegner, and it is a Danish classic, and you can just really see the Scandinavian lines and soft, light wood that is very symbolic of the Scandinavian architecture. And over here in the corner we have a lounge chair, again by Hans Wegner. It is also a very classic Danish design, and it is super comfortable, but it consists of more industrial materials such as metal and rope. And I love that the material of the rope really just symbolizes or cites the fact that we are on a boat. So this is really the perfect lounge chair for when you're living on a boat. Because it gets cold in Copenhagen in the winter, it is autumn and it already is quite cold if I'm honest. There's a large fireplace and oven to warm the living room area. And you can see that there is this perfect mixture of industrial, rough and rustic features paired with all of these gorgeous designer icons and incredible pieces of furniture. And I just love it whenever different worlds collide and the space isn't too polished, but just has this very refined and layered design language. And I'm absolutely obsessed with it. So over here we have the second terrace, and it is just this large boat, and I feel like inside you don't really realize that you were actually living in a boat, because the boat and the structure of the boat has been integrated so incredibly well into the design. But outside here, of course, you are reminded. And this space is just a place to relax with your family and have some dinner or go for a morning swim. And how this glass window connects the private spaces to the terrace, I will show you later. Also, comment below if you could imagine living in a boat like this or if it's a no-go for you. I definitely could. Also, my absolute all-time favorite chairs of Arne Jacobsen are over here. They are called the Grand Prix, and they were actually like his most famous design ever, and they're absolutely gorgeous. Over here, opposite of the kitchen, there is a small desk area where you can do some reading or the kids can do some homework. And you can see that this plant wall that we have over here really creates this almost separate zoning of the open living room. And even though the spaces are connected, when you're sitting down on your table, looking outside into the water, you still feel like you are kind of in a secluded space. And I absolutely love this crisp yellow color paired with the black and white stripes. Also, I would have absolutely loved this when I was a kid, but over here there actually is a ladder that leads you up to a net where you can hang out, and it is incredible and super cool. And it actually is a little bit scary up there because you are just super high above the ground. Behind me, there is the second proper living room area. Opposite of the entryway, there is a large sofa area, and I love that the architect really just created the sofa world of one big square, because who actually sits on a sofa how you're supposed to? Everybody's just lying around. So they just completely skipped that part and created almost a bed-like situation. The blue color really gives the design some depth and draws the design to the floor and gives it a sense of grounding. And on top of the sofa, there's a large artwork with graphic lines, I think, of architecture, and it just creates this very graphic design. The sofa is surrounded by large plants as well as bookshelves that are mounted to the wall, so they feel super lightweight and everything is overflowing with books, and you just get this sense that the space is truly lived in and is being used every day. Also, there's a table dedicated just to a record player, an entire shelf filled with different records, so you can see that music is a very integral part of the design. And over here we even have a record by Dexter Gordon, and the street that we're actually in is also called Dexter Gordon. And Dexter Gordon was actually a musician who lived a long time throughout these streets, so his spirit is being remembered. The wooden floors as well as the metal railing have been preserved and are still original details from when this boat was built, and so we just have this constant connection to its structure and history. And this stair leads us down into the more private areas of the home, and that is the sleeping areas. Here in the center, and this is super cool, there is a large drum setup with guitars, so you can really see that the family loves to make music, and it's really cool to have it standing here. And then through these vintage wooden doors, we come into the first part. Here we are in the more private areas of the home, and in the lower floor you are again unmistakably reminded that you are in fact not in a house but in a boat, and I absolutely love it. So instead of walls we have these wooden panels that actually are the bottom of the boat, and so you have this very unique architecture that you are living in. And because there wasn't space for a sofa or something like that, you can see that the architect was super creative, or there was a built-in custom bed situation created that is super high and that hugs itself into the irregular shape of the boat, and it's just this very unique and mind-blowing situation. Opposite of me, there actually is a small red ladder, and when you climb up, you can actually exit out to the terrace and just go for your morning swim while everybody else is asleep. And this would be my dream if I could just easily exit my bedroom through a small window and then jump into the ocean. It's super cool. To both sides, there's custom inbuilt shelves that also take on the round shape. Over here, there is another bedroom. It is separated through glass doors that can be opened or closed. Also over here, the bed is super high and custom because otherwise you wouldn't be able to install a bed in this area. And we have these small round windows throughout the lower floor, and they just constantly remind us that we are on a boat. And the round shape is mimicked again inside the mirror that is on top of this gorgeous small minimalist desk. And you can see that even though we're living in a very historical, rustic and untypical way, there still is space for a bedside lamp or for a Scandinavian table or for a super cool modern chair. So just because you're living one certain way doesn't mean that you can't have everything else. Through the doors, we come into the entryway, and over here there's yet again another bedroom. Only here the wooden panels aren't painted white, but they're still in their original brown color. And the brown and green color palette just creates this very industrial and rustic, down-to-earth ambience, and it's super cool. Now let's go and take a look at the bathroom. So the bathroom is hiding behind the stairs, and it is a large open room. And even in the bathroom, you would think in a space this unique, they would forget the bathroom and just create a regular one. But even the toilet has an incredible space-age design. The mirror is filled with light and just creates this beautiful light that illuminates your face. Okay, now I'm really curious on what you guys think. Before I tell you my scores, go comment what scores you would give this apartment in total. So first up, functionality. Functionality, I would give a Houseboat an 8 out of 10. So what I think the Houseboat does really well is the overall layout on the upper deck, and it's shockingly spacious for a floating home, and it has a lot of different zones and areas which I think are super livable. But a limitation I did notice was the ground or like lower part of the boat, where you just have all of these different bedrooms crammed together. But at the same time, I think it is not really possible to find a better solution because you are living on a boat. That is just the compromise that you have to make. Next up, color material harmony. Definitely a 10 out of 10. I absolutely loved all of the colorful and crisp colors, and at the same time keeping this very bright and clean Scandinavian aesthetic alive. Up next is lighting, and at the beginning of the video I said lighting might be a big issue with houseboats. I would give it a 9 out of 10, and I think why the light works so well is because A, you have a lot of windows, but B, the color palette is so light, and you have all of these really white walls and then all of these like yellow, soft yellow accents that just create this very crisp atmosphere. The only minus point for the light is also at the lower floor or the bottom floor of the boat, because you just don't have a lot of natural light there. But this again just is the natural limitation of the boat, so I'm not really sure if the architect could have done anything to change it. And for the concept, I would also give it a 10 out of 10 because I just really love this like industrial character filled with all of these incredible designer icons, and it just feels unmistakably Scandinavian, but like with this piratey, colorful and lively twist. Comment below your scores, and if you like this video, you will love this one up there.